this very great introduction. Now, before I start introducing what is asset management, a lot of people do get confused between asset management. What exactly is asset management? And we have been talking about fintech since morning. Whether fintech is useful, whether fintech is not useful from consumer perspective, from user perspective, demand, supply. I was a part of the discussion early in the morning. Before I, get ahead and enter the technicalities, my blank question to all the people here, and I'll start with Dhaval. Dhaval, I really like your headphones.
Okay.
I'll start with Dhaval first. Dhaval, does asset management as a sector takes fintech as a threat, or does it take it as an opportunity? That's my first question. It's open to all the panelists, of course, but we start with Dhaval.
Yeah. To me, I would honestly think it is an opportunity, right? I mean, whether it is in terms of, fintech could help in various ways for the asset management sector. One is, obviously, if you look at, the asset management in terms of, conducting risk, what are the various things that, an asset management company or industry would do, right? Obviously, they are managing money. To manage money, they would, do research, on various instruments that they are investing into, whether it's stocks or, ETFs or, debt instruments and so on and so forth, right? So that's one part of it, at a much higher level. The other piece is obviously, acquiring customers, right? For people who buy into, those investments that or instruments or funds that the asset management company is offering, right? So, I mean, I would say, these would be two sort of core elements. Obviously, there are many more parts to it, like servicing, operations, transactions, and so on and so forth. But if you look at each of these legs, whether it is research or onboarding or, operations or transactions and so on and so forth, I think, fintech obviously can play a significant role in each of these areas, right? So, I would think it's an opportunity, when it comes to whether it's, when you're doing research or when you're transacting. I mean, if you go back, a few years ago when we didn't have so many digital platforms, right? And executing trades, just imagine executing trades during a pandemic, where everything is locked down now without, fintech or the platforms that we have available right now. A lot of that would not have been possible, right? So, I would say from various perspectives in all of these areas, fintech, again, customer onboarding. Just very quickly, I know there are a lot of people here to talk about, more items as well. But, reaching out to retail, investors, people who want to invest, say 1,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees into, through SIPs through a couple of mutual funds. Now, I'm not sure, whether too many banks or wealth management companies will go after these guys, right? So, but an online platform like a fintech can obviously, provide, is open to even retail sort of the smallest of investment tickets that can be supported by the asset
Well, I think there is some
companies.
audio fluctuation at your end. There's some audio fluctuation.
Okay.
Was I the only one who was hearing it, or did other panelists hear it as well? That is the problem with technology. You're not sure what's happening.
Yeah,
please go
ahead. So maybe I'll talk a bit slowly as well. Is that so I was saying that onboarding such sort of clients or investors from small towns, small cities. I think without fintech platforms, I think it would have been very difficult to onboard retail investors into the ecosystem. So I think from various ways, examples that I gave, I would think it's an opportunity for the asset.
You classify it as an opportunity. It's not a threat for you. Swastik,
that's right.
You don't seem happy with Dhaval's answer?
No, I actually think that generally fintech is on both sides of we are competition and we are collaboration.
Yes.
We are competition because if you sort of see it as new asset managers trying to really have a foray, you can't really go the old traditional route.
Correct.
Right? Recognizing compression on fees, and we've sort of seen that movement from active to passive management in the rest of the world. Right. And if you think of it, like some of the pieces which Dhaval mentioned about risk management, the fact that actually passive asset management is part of also trying to take the burden of risk management away from the active investor to the end customer as well. So yes, I've seen a fee compression. That fee compression, of course, also results in the distribution stream sort of being a bit of a pain. However, particular to India, we see that it's a far greater collaborative opportunity. The ability to distribute on a what you could call almost a phygital basis, right? Empowering a distribution network with the digital technology really adds a lot, where such a small, less than 5-6% of India is really even investing actively in financial assets.
Less than 2%. If I rightly understand.
Actually, you probably are right? I'm talking in terms of number of demat accounts and sort of where you really get that to
Okay.
And the number of folios. So absolutely, it's an extremely massive opportunity for collaboration. What that will also result is in the evolution of the asset management industry to becoming almost digital first, right? You've seen specialist managers going into becoming digital first as part of their distribution in many parts of the world. And we can see that, especially, if you don't have the luxury of a massive brand name, you are a single, lone warrior. It's far easier for you to create a kind of a far more digitally nuanced product than it is for you to be doing distribution all on your brand's name.
Sure. Now, the other panelists, Yash, Prabhakar and Sanjeev, what I would request is that, the problem with the generic question is that the first two panelists take away the chunk of the answers and the remaining one don't have to add much. So if there is any other aspect which people want to add, we can continue with this question or we should move on to the next part of the question. But anyways, I'll give the mic to Prabhakar.
Yeah, so Abhinay, I would like to add to this, I think, see somewhere I would say it's more of like a strategic partner in a competition mode, and I will talk about how Apple and Samsung, which will compete like cats and dogs in the smartphone business, will compete on technology where Samsung had an advantage. And Apple
tell me. Also here,
right? We
are having them compete in every sector.
Correct. So the point I wanted to make here is that, and the other important thing is that today I do not think that the gap between the traditional conventional company and fintech is so much. Like if you look at Angel Broking today, like we are a 30 years old organization. In the business, we have always been innovative. Today, we are competing with the likes of Zerodha, Upstocks, and Grow, which some of them are VC-funded company on equal terms. We are having the second largest exchange turnover. We are like in top 3 in terms of demat account acquisition.
Yes.
In top 4 in terms of active clients. The point I'm making is that you cannot assume that the companies which have been in the business for longer are necessarily conventional and do not know about the technology. So when you talk about, the only advantage fintech have is somewhere they start without a legacy, so they are able to show more nimbleness. Many of them are funded by VC who have a longer gestation period in mind, and they do not ask from ROI from a day one. So the point I'm making is that it's not about considering them threat. I would rather like to learn with them, partner with them. Like we partnered with Smallcase, we partnered with Strix, we partnered with those people. At the same time, today, I would like to, introduce Angel Broking as another fintech. Now, you may laugh at it in their 30 years old history. I'll say, so what? I'm already competing. I have everything available. I can open your account in 5 minutes. My experience is amazing. There are other things which I will take care of it in future. So I would say net, the point I want to make here is that it's a matter of being a strategic partner. It is a cooperation out there. And even traditional companies can convert fintech. It's all about using technology. And that's what I think is the future.
Strategic partner, that's what Prabhakar says. Sanjeev.
I think what Prabhakar and Swastik, they really hit the nail on its head. I think the partnership is the way to go. We've seen globally also, and I see that happening in India because the opportunity in India is massive. You look at the household savings. We are, even if you look at the MFAUM, we are at 30 lakh crore on the Jan end number. It's 11% versus, the GDP. Whereas, the rest of the world is something like 60%, 70%, 80%. So there's a huge gap, the headroom is huge. And I think there's both the play for the, traditional asset management along with the fintech, both of them can come together and, just grab this opportunity.
Okay. Yash, you seem more curious.
Hi, good afternoon. First of all, thank you so much for having me here, Abhinav and the BW.
Sure.
So just building on from what the other panelists said, the next growth chapter in our great country is going to include the financial inclusion of masses, right? And that, for that, value needs to be created and not captured among each other. So, of course, both these sort of players need to work hand in hand. They need to collaborate and they need to, just provide the ecosystem to facilitate that.
Okay, facilitate that. That's what you feel, Yash. Now, the second part of the conversation, I'll start with Sanjeev here. Sanjeev, asset management is not something which customers use on a daily basis, as compared to credit or a debit card, or maybe digital payments, which are done on a daily basis. That's where fintech is spreading its arms and like anything. What do you think is the basic difference when it comes to the approach of asset fund managers in using fintech as a help tool? I mean, rather than using it as a data tool, is there any specific help or a specific collaboration which asset managers can look forward towards fintech rather than just using it as a data tool?
I think what a lot of asset managers globally and also in India has started doing it is that they are reaching out to the fintech players and try and construct product based on the customer persona, right?
Okay.
So the idea is, see, in a typically physical
You're saying
world,
customization of products.
customization of the product. For example, typically in an offline world, you will have a client and an advisor advising him on a various product, depends on his department, and it's very difficult to replicate to entire the mass, right?
Correct.
He'll just say, okay, put X amount of money in this fund and Y amount of money in this fund, right? Whereas when it's a fintech coming in, he's doing a goal-based investing based on the algos and based on his risk profile. He can customize it based on the user-to-user interface. So that's what we have seen, happening here.
Customized solutions. Swastik,
Yeah.
Do you agree with what Sanjeev has to say?
Yeah, no, I believe that's quite true. The one particular distinction that I find is in the why asset management exists for us is that you're basically outsourcing decision making, right?
Correct.
That's the key to it. Now, of course, as more and more, and the reason why it's done it is for two reasons. One is lack of experience, right? And you are all and asset allocation investing is by the nature of it a suboptimal exercise, right? The second part is that the lack of time, right? And awkwardly enough, the more sophisticated you are, the more time poor you are. Even if you have the wherewithal and the capability to do it, you just don't have the time to do it, right? So outsourcing that decision making to third parties is where it sort of works. Now, like you mentioned about the credit cards, all of those consumer items, there is no dirt from the end consumer's point of view of decision making, right? Because yes, I want to buy it, swipe it, make it as seamless. So I'm just sort of trying to compress my time. I don't have an allocation issue over there.
No.
Asset management does have this, right? There's this additional layer of value that needs to get added in terms of that asset management, right? Now, particularly because of the pandemic, right? And particularly because a large number of asset managers have not done very well, because if you were to try to follow traditional rules in asset management, you would have tried to sit yourself out in cash for a very long amount of time, right? Throughout the pandemic. And that's meant that people have been a bit distraught and saying, okay, I'm going to do my own investing, because now I've suddenly been able to add time to, to my sort of, to what I historically didn't have. And that's, so yes, to answer sort of, to add on to Sanjeev's point, yes, we do see the persona building is definitely there. Some of our assumptions of that persona have been a bit disrupted through the pandemic, because we've suddenly found people who weren't, who historically were time poor and aren't any longer. And that's moved towards, direct investing. That's why I've seen a massive increase in brokerage accounts, an outflow from the asset management industry in many places, a move towards passive investments as well. So that's the risk that we have to bear with, and that's one thing which the asset management industry will need to look at coping up with. At the same time, creating products is a very valuable, capability right now, and a very valuable opportunity, because you've suddenly got a much larger sophistication of the client. He's looking for far more, right? Historically, I'll just give a few lakh rupees and every SIP, and someone else is going to do it. But now, because he's also got this time, that's meant I really need to look back at my portfolio and figure out what's happening. So the bar on investment managers and asset managers has risen. I need to be delivering more product. I need to be making these products more bespoke. I need to be finding more asset classes for my end client to be adding value to them. And that's where we're working extremely well.
Sure. Yash?
Yeah, so you touched upon data collection. The other aspect of it is data analysis. And as Swastik touched upon, it helps you to develop more efficient marketing strategies and just designing product to cater to the customer in a way. A lot of fintech platforms have other products for which they have.
Yes,
so they have cross-selling. They have a lot of other data available.
Yeah, you're back.
Hi, sorry, am I?
Yes, you're back.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. So I was saying that a lot of fintech platforms have customers onboarded already for other products that they're dealing with, and it just allows them the opportunity to digitize the onboarding process once and for all, and just provide them access to mutual funds at very low costs, at very low transaction charges, and not just mutual funds. I mean any financial class. So.
Sure. Prabhakar?
See, today, like if you expect this 20 to 30 years old customer who has grown with Google, Facebook, iPhone to talk to some gray-haired, financial advisor about their financial planning, then we are kind of totally mistaken, right? I mean, they are more comfortable. Some time back I was reading some Oracle research, and they are saying that people in India are far more comfortable with robot than humans to talk about their financial stuff and all, right? Angel Broking was among the first to kind of launch a rule-based ARC platform, rule-based investment engine. I mean, in common parlance, you can call it a robo-advisory. And the problem with most of the algorithm is that it can do the backtesting very beautifully, because everything is like a wisdom in hindsight, but you cannot take away the human emotions, the way it plays out. And most of the financial advisor will tell you that while you can get a particular asset class intelligent information from some individual, but the holding and the kind of advice I can give you, the mindset change I can do for you over a longer period of time, I mean, nobody can match that, right? So somewhere, in my opinion, that's why such solution will work, algorithm will work. And from an angel broking angle, because we want to be number one in our business and also kind of have a significant play in distribution business in next 2-3 years time frame, we are figuring out and in fact we have like moved to a open architecture, and we have a smart API in place for algo trading and this high frequency trading. And also we are moving to open architecture where we want other fintechs to build propositions on top of it. So whatever we have been able to build as a capability, we want to offer to more fintech to go out and kind of do business on top of it. In fact, we are also willing to allow them to have an access to our customers where they can try out their newer ideas. So this is how it is kind of moving for us.
Dhaval, for you on the separation of categories?
I would think that probably one area in which fintech probably needs to figure out a way to work better is how to manage investor behavior, right? And probably Swastik and Sanjeev maybe touched upon it a bit as well. Then how do you try and ensure because you may not have a physical interface with the investor. How do you ensure that he doesn't become his own enemy in a way, right? When it comes to managing their own portfolio, right? So I think that's one area which probably last year we had a very short bear market, so to say. So we didn't have a very long period where we saw a big downturn in the market, and that's when you would have actually seen the reaction of investors. But you've seen something else happen, like Swastik said, in terms of people starting to try and do stuff on their own, right? Buying stocks and trading on their own. So how do you manage this investor behavior? Sitting outside, you always think that what are these people doing? Why are they doing what they're doing in that sense, right? How long can this continue? How long do you think you can make money just by trading day in and day out? So I think that's one area where probably fintechs need to really try and sort of up their game, in the sense that try and figure out how do you deal with investor behavior. How do you ensure that the investor doesn't become their own enemy, so to say.
That's a very interesting point you've brought, and now this calls for a different direction to this conversation we are having. Now, when it comes to fintech helping asset management companies in retaining customers or expanding the customer base, when compared to US, India is a very underserved market. People hardly invest. Less than 2% of Indians invest, and when it talks about mutual fund, people just know that mutual fund sahi hai. Beyond that, nobody knows anything. सही दाल खिचड़ी भी है, लेकिन दाल खिचड़ी लोग रोज खाते नहीं हैं. People are just aware कि वो सही है. My point is, and I'll start with Yash. how do you think fintech companies can enhance customer base? What needs to be done on the behalf of fintech companies to help asset managers to enhance their customer base? Like one of the panelists rightly highlighted, judging the emotional factor. How can fintech solve something like a confirmation bias, which is more of a human trait than a technology trait?
Yeah, so the key advantage of technology, I mean, it remains that it is not bound by boundaries or the need of huge resources. Technology can. Sorry, am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead. Yes.
So technology can just enable you expanding your reach and expanding your horizons. I mean, technology has quickly moved from becoming a business enabler to becoming a business driver. And so basically, the fintech platforms need to collaborate to just take the products to the masses and just include them.
Okay, Dhaval, I'll come to you because you initiated this conversation, balancing the emotional and the technical side. So I give the mic to you. What do you think fintech companies need to do in order to help asset managers to expand their base, apart from, of course, addressing the emotional or the human factor?
No, I think, probably, obviously, they're doing some of it, right? I mean, they are reaching out to segments that were probably, not catered to earlier, right? I mean, like we said, a lot of new investors are being added through some of these fintech platforms that we know of them, right? I mean, so I think they're able to do that. I think what we need to see is that how well are they able to sustain this, right? So you have people who started SIPs, who started investing, but how are they able to sustain, the entire customer journey, right? It's not just about, investing in an SIP, right? It's about achieving a goal, right? So how do you actually ensure that, the investor stays through that journey? And probably what's going to happen, to my mind, is that, as the investors, wealth grows, as their goals sort of increase, as they grow in life, maybe they may need, a physical advisor as well. I mean, probably, right? So, can fintechs also, in a way, can they sort of also build out, a bionic kind of, or a phygital kind of an approach where you have a mix of a physical presence as well as, obviously an online presence as well. But,
combination
to try
of
and
both.
sustain, so combination of both, so that, you are able to, sustain and stay with the investor through their own, investing life cycle, as they're achieving their goals. And not just, to my mind, as of now, probably it appears that maybe a lot of the fintechs are successful in onboarding new investors, right? But like I said, how do they really build out, through that life cycle is the key. How do they increase the average holding period for an investor in a mutual fund, right? Even time and again, data shows that, the average holding period for most investors, even in equity mutual funds, doesn't exceed 2 to 3 years, right? Which, as we know, is a very short time frame to get the right kind of experience and to be able to achieve your goals, from investing in mutual funds. So I think the key is, how do you stay with the investor through their, life cycle? And through
this behavior which you're mentioning, Dhaval, is not only confined to fintech, but in general, the mutual fund investments. This is a general behavior which investors have.
Absolutely. It is a general behavior.
So Sanjeev, coming to you and taking from Dhaval's point, do you think fintech, how should we solve this problem?
I think one of the things which we have done, I think some of the other platforms are also doing that, is that they're trying to, move away from showing the performance of a particular scheme for the last 1 year or 2 years, because typically earlier it used to be the best performing fund for the last 1 year, whether it's a sectoral fund or infra fund or thematic fund, irrespective, they'll just show and the user will say, okay, it's 100% return, I will invest in immediately, right? And that's a recipe for disaster, right? So what we've seen is that now everybody's moving toward from this kind of a marketplace to a goal-based investing. So instead of, we are not in a business of selling returns to the customer, right? We are trying to say, okay, you are coming to my platform, can I help you reach your goal? Right? The idea is, over the next 12 months, 6 months, 18 months, 24, or most of the goals in our platform are fairly small because the audience which we are catering to is very young. Their on average age is 24, 25 years. Most of them are saving for, say, buying a bike for after 3 years. Some are buying for a trip to pre-COVID trip to Europe, right? So those goals are very small in a sense that the equity doesn't come in that much. But instead of saying for this particular goal, invest in this particular fund, no, we are doing okay. Instead of that, you invest in this is the asset allocation. This is you go about it, and do not talk about performance of the schemes. Just say, okay, month on month, year on year, what is the progress of your goal vis-a-vis reaching 100%. So that is the only thing which will take the emotions out of investing. Otherwise, he'll keep on seeing the dashboard and whether it's a green or red, and he'll just act accordingly, like the whole thing just talked about.
And this approach, I would like to just lay some more time on this, Sanjeev. This approach of yours, how did you conclude that you have to follow this approach? Was it based on the data you gathered from the market, or was it peer-to-peer suggestion?
So no, I think one of the things was that both me and my co-founder, we came from the industry. So since you are in the industry, you can see the gaps more glaringly. And when we did a feedback before we launched the product, some of the feedback was from the users was that, I get a call from my RM, bank RM or XYZ. Every time it talk about he's trying to sell me a product. It's all about him, his requirement, his targets. It's not about me. So I think that's what kind of drove us to make this product.
Sure. Swastik?
Yeah. So I think what I strongly echo what Sanjeev just mentioned. To add to that, so what that does tell you is it's actually a back-end, a product-driven, industry. It's still right? And that's actually one of my challenges with mutual funds Sahi here. Because when mutual funds Sahi has started out as a practice, the rest of the world was moving out to saying mutual funds Sahi nahi hai, right? Move to passives, right? So, but it does play a very important role, because it now is recognizing that the financialization of assets does need to take place. People need to move away from hard real assets into financial assets, because that is what really then starts powering the economy, right? So all things said and done, for the purpose that it is, it's definitely a solution. It does have a skewed incentive structure in the industry. On the behavior side, right? And so at Vinvesta, we enable people to invest into US stocks, into foreign stocks. And and the GameStop example is a really, really good example, because you don't have GameStop-like phenomena in India. Correct. But all these significant circuit breakers, you don't have short selling of the kind that it does. You don't have this massive activist kind of industry. And we had covered GameStop in the second week of December, when the stock price was like $17. Just a small industry story based on the reports and so on. And I mean, of course, we probably had some investors who went on to buy it and did phenomenally well. But we in fact had issued to them that it's dangerous, right? So fantastic that you did really well, but this is still a dangerous play. We're not in the investment advice business, but these are the kinds of phenomena where we see that we have a bit of a duty to tell them, right? So, right, as to what, the things that you don't know, the things that you are missing, that you have to take into consideration, right? By and large, the retail industry has lost out money in any of these bubbles, right?
I beg your pardon, I could not hear the last line you said. What?
No, I was just saying that by and large, the retail investors have lost money in most of these kinds of bubble-like environments.
Okay. Prabhakar?
See, in my opinion, there's a big change in investor behavior. So in what we know as a thumb rule in stock market is that retail investors join in droves when the stock market is on record highs. That's what happens, and they come for the IPOs because they believe they will get those stock at the lowest price at that time, right? But it's the first time during COVID-19, when the stock market mall, all quality stocks were in deep discounts and people came in droves, and this is a very change in behavior which happened. And it happened not because they have changed their mind, this is the time to enter stock market. It happened because their physicality has changed. They were confined in their homes, they had plenty of time now to kind of, do their studies, talk to their friends, and then, choose the quality stock and enter the stock market. After going for low for another 1.5 months, the stock market started picking up. And then the second order effect came in the play, where they went to their friends and family, told them the stock market is a great place to work, a great place to make money. It's just like taking a walk in the park, and they came in droves. And that's how still now, I mean, we are seeing, so much of, kind of customers joining us. Like in last 2 quarters, every quarter we're adding 5 lakh customers a month. Okay.
Okay.
Almost 10 million customers have opened their Demat accounts in last 1 year. These are like gigantic number, and being the top 3 in the Demat accounts opening in this country, I mean, we are seeing that number. So in terms of investor behavior, first I want to tell you that it's not the same behavior which will continue. For example, there's a change in behavior. I told you about how stock market behavior has changed over time. The second aspect I want to make is that most of the time why people have a short-term approach, particularly in retail, why they kind of break their mutual fund or without giving it time to grow, is because the disposable income was a big issue in the country. I mean, people didn't have so much disposable income, so much investment amount was not there. They were not keeping emergency funds, so they will break their mutual fund and other things, because of the requirements which are coming in the way. The best thing which has happened now, and I'm telling you, this is more of a tier 2 and tier 3 phenomenon. So we are seeing almost 90% of our customer for last 1.5 years are coming from tier 2 and tier 3 towns. And more importantly, go ahead.
You're saying, please complete your line.
So and they are coming millennials. They are into first time into their job, and whatever they are saving thanks to COVID, whatever they could save in the commuting and socializing cost, from the Starbucks cup of coffee or whatever, they are able to put that back in the stock market, right? So in my opinion, the investor behavior, of course, is forever evolving. Fintech algorithm may help. And for example, the ARC advisory we have, it's like a mini PMS, though we don't call it, but we give. So if you want to enter the stock market with 10,000 rupees and with 5 stocks, we will give you those stocks, and how you break your 10,000. After a month, we will ask you to rebalance. Okay. But if you don't rebalance, we can't do rebalance ourselves because that's against the norm, which is there. They have to do the rebalancing themselves. And we are seeing the improvement of rebalancing compliance is improving. So I believe the investor behavior is not a kind of, something which will keep on evolving, particularly in a country like ours, unlike US.
Okay, so investor behavior is evolving with time. And like Prabhakar also pointed out, most of the customers are coming from tier 2 and tier 3. A lot of them are first time investors. And that's what brings us to the last part of the conversation. Relationship management, a very key aspect when it comes to, for asset management companies, even a small digital payments app, even a small retail shop. Now, if I ask about relationship management, a very key aspect of tech companies, fintech being a part of them, is data collection. Now, there are 2 aspects to data collection. One is predicting the user behavior. Second is giving the customer the solution which they might need but are not yet aware of. Now, when it comes to fintech and asset management companies collaborating for future work, will it be helpful for asset management companies, and or what do they expect from the fintech companies so as to take relationship management to a completely new level? Not catching them off guard because there's a huge collection of data at their disposal, but serving them in the rightful fashion so that the user base is also increased. Swastik, we'll start with you.
So relationship management is a very, I'd say, nuanced field, and becomes even more nuanced, particularly.
Yes.
Recognizing that, fintechs, we tended to start on single verticals. However, the relationship manager has the duty of trying to tell on a more wholesome basis, right? Now, due to the phenomena that Sanjeev and I sort of mentioned about it being a very product distribution driven kind of industry, relationship management becomes even more difficult because, at least the SEBI IA rules now sort of give you the incentive structure to need to be client focused. So absolutely, it is tricky that, one, is the relationship management industry well kitted out to give a wholesome sort of solution? And unfortunately, in my view, it's not so, except for the ultra HNI and the HNI clients for whom, the relationship managers tend to manage on a far, far more diverse asset allocation kind of basis, right? Second,
so you can't outsource your relationship management to a startup, to a fintech startup.
No, I don't think the relationship management actually is the part which is the least fintech friendly, right?
Okay.
You can draw insights out of it, right? You can draw insights. You can use this data to sort of say, like how Amazon would say, people who bought this book bought these other books, right? So yes, you can draw those insights and say, about 20 to 30 years old, 30 to 40 year olds, these are what people are sort of investing in, and these are the good reasons why you would, and these are the disclaimers why you shouldn't, right? But at the same time, the fintech industry can enable, but I don't think it's the best place for the relationship manager to stay. to
Sure.
align some of the coalition incentives as well in the way this industry is structured today, at least the way it is over here. As
Okay.
the fintechs and as sort of, the asset management industry and the wealth management industry, particularly, not the asset management, right? The wealth management industry becomes far more broad-based in its recognition of all of and expertise in all of the asset classes. That's where then, in my view, would there be a far better fintech layer to be able to provide to them for the RM perspective.
Okay.
I don't know if
Okay.
that was clarifying, and I hope that was sort of adequately clarifying on the various incentive structures as the product.
Sure. We'll get to know about that. Dhaval?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that, with what Swastik was saying in a bit in terms of, relationship management, with fintech, I think obviously fintech can play the role of more of an enabler to a relationship manager, right? I mean, in terms of understanding their needs and sort of, building out, today, for instance, if you're constructing a financial plan, right, a lot of people just simply use very straight line estimates, right? People say that, all right, equities can grow by so much over the next 5-10 years, and etc., which you need to build, a goal-based kind of a plan for a client, right? But the fact of the matter is that there could be multiple scenarios that could build out, right? I mean, based on, the client withdrawing money at different points of time, based on how different market scenarios play out. So how would you really be able to build out all those scenarios for a client and present it to them in a very simple manner, right? So I think that's where, fintech in terms of tools and understanding client needs can come in. I think the other way is in terms of, the asset management industry in India probably hasn't really, to my mind, although they like to position themselves that way, but they still aren't providing solutions. So in a way, if you want to invest in a single fund up to your retirement or up to your entire life cycle, would you be able to do that, right? The asset manager will tell you, all right, currently you put money in equity, you gradually move it to debt. But can't the asset manager create a product called as a target date fund or a life cycle fund, which can serve you for your entire cycle? Now, I think that's where probably, fintechs, based on, the data that they can collect about investors, what their goals, what their needs are, can help, try and build some of this innovation into the asset management industry.
Okay.
I know that's a different tune to what you were asking, but I think that's one area in which...
that's one aspect of it. Sanjeev, I'll ask you this question in a different way. Since you mentioned one case study, we did a mutual fund campaign with one of the mutual fund companies who associated with us, and we called it Problem Kya Hai? Okay, so like you mentioned, like if this is a dream, suppose you have a problem, या फिर ड्रीम क्या है जो हम लोग अक्सर बेचते हैं कि मतलब आपको 10 साल बाद अपनी बेटी की शादी करनी है, और maybe after some time you want to send your kids abroad, or you want to settle down, you want to retire early. Everybody has some problems or a dream, the way you put it. Can a fintech, based on the collection of data, can offer such solutions, or they would be playing with the data and even offer more aggressive sales pitch when it comes to wealth management? I hope I'm making my question clear.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. I think the first thing, we need to look at what kind of an audience we are dealing with here. So if you look at the entire, kind of the people who are investing in MF or in India as such, you have roughly around 330 million born after 1980, and roughly 400 or upwards of 400 million have born after 2000. So the people who are born after 19 and who are like a digital native, they behave totally different than we are, especially I'm talking about myself. So for them, their relationship is, in a sense, with money and with the financial advisor is totally different. So in a sense, there's a lot of research which has happened in US. In a sense, they prefer, if given an option today to them to go for a bank like a JP Morgan or a Goldman Sachs versus a bank from, let's say, Facebook or Google, they'll go for Facebook, Google, or Amazon. Right? They are totally different. So that's point number one. Point number two is obviously it.
Remember, Sanjeev, we are talking about data. So mention with.
Yeah. So
when you mention Facebook, Amazon, Google, you've got to be a little careful.
Yeah. So data privacy, reg tech, they're all becoming more and more. They're coming up in the upfront. And with now we are going up with the account aggregator, which can go live, so which will make the life of all the fintechs and all the users also becoming much easier. So AI customized portfolio risk profile will take time, but it's evolved. Means if you ask me today, no. At the moment, no. But over a period of time, every player will evolve. They become more and more centric to the user, and they can offer solution based on the user persona.
Based on the user persona. Yash, do you agree with that? Based on the kind of services you offer?
Yeah, so I just want to talk about a broader aspect of customer relation management as well, which is establishing trust between the customer and the corporation, so to say.
Okay.
If I were to give an example, say real estate investment trusts, which there's been a few recently listed which have been successful. The reason why the adaptability and the acceptability came within the retail investor market was because SEBI came out with regulations, and SEBI came out with a very proactive approach where they listened to the market feedback. They evolved those regulations in a way to establish that trust today. So similarly, I believe that fintech players need to pioneer and need to work with regulators to establish that ecosystem, so that, as you said, a lot of these customers are this is the first time they're getting onboarded into the financial system. So it's important that we take care of that aspect, whether that is with the adoption of blockchain technology. I mean, there's people more qualified than me to speak about that. But I believe establishing trust is a key aspect.
Sure, Prabhakar.
See, I would see this in two ways. So first way is from the customer angle, what you pay is what you get. Okay, simple as that. So I mean, in 2019 we went to discount brokerage model. Before that we were a full service brokerage firm, right? So we will not just give a great platform, but we'll also do a lot of research. We will do advisory and we'll do customer service. Now when we moved to discount brokerage as a discount brokerage firm, we said that we will give a equity, we'll become a sizable retail equity player. So there'll be uniformity to our product. I mean, we are not going after HNI or ultra HNIs. We'll give the same sort of product, and this is how we're gonna be managing it, right? The first question the fintech or any company should ask is that what are you giving the customer what you are able to pay for? Like I mean, because if we can cut down our cost, we can pass on the benefit to the customer. And that's why we are giving a 0 and 20 kind of pricing we could do. The second thing which I want to understand from the customer angle, sorry, not from the company angle, which is about is it a relationship manager or you're talking about customer service or advisory? If it's about customer service, I mean, more and more it has to become digital. So take for example, today we use a lot of chatbot, on our web interface, on our app interface. We have something called Angel Assist. So on customer service, you cannot dilute it at all. You have to provide it. The second is aspect of relationship manager is advisory. And this is where, a lot of fintech companies are coming out with innovation. We are also doing it. So this is where I would expect everyone to answer a question, what is the relationship manager for, the customer angle and from the, company angle.
Okay. Since we're running short of time, one last quick question for all of you. And I request all of you to answer in yes or no. That's it. And we'll start with Yash. Yash, do you believe that fintech firms today can handle investor bias? Yes or no?
I should be saying yes, but I must say no, unfortunately, right now.
No, we have to be human first. Sanjeev.
Same like Swastik. I would like to say yes, but not at the moment. The stage which we are in right now, no.
I really appreciate the honesty. That's what we are expecting from India's young entrepreneurial ecosystem if they want to solve real problems. Dhaval, yes or no?
No.
Prabhakar?
No.
So 4 out of 5 panelists today term that fintech is not able to handle investor bias. So long way to go, but definitely with young entrepreneurs who have the ability to take on difficult questions like Swastik and Sanjeev themselves, and of course the other panelists. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to a bright future with fintech and asset management companies. Sanjeev, Swastik, Yash, Prabhakar, Dhaval, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for that.